Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, June 19th. That's Juneteenth, as it happens. June 19th, 2024. Time for another show. Time for emancipation from slavery. A couple hundred years late there. But, yeah, Juneteenth. Not on my current refrigerator calendar. So I got to get a better class of refrigerator calendar to remind me of things like this. And, all right, why not? Let's note it and get started on the day. Lots of news to catch up with. Some political, some entire world taking notice. I guess I'll say the entire world taking notice because America takes notice. Willie Mays has died, and kind of everybody knows him, and even around the world. And baseball, popular enough around the world that it is a world event to note the death of Willie Mays. Among the many other things we'll be rounding up today. And, of course, lots of political news to catch up on as well. It is Wednesday. That means yesterday was Tuesday. That's not news in itself. But there were primaries yesterday. We had them. I mean, we had them to the extent that it was the last day of voting. I guess that's the way they're doing it now. The way they're expressing it on all of the campaign literature, et cetera. Vote, where they used to say, vote June 18th. They now say vote by June 18th. And so, all the extra ink usage is bad for the environment, but that's what we're doing anyway. Primary day yesterday here in Virginia. Some exciting results, I guess you could say. I don't know. Some results, some things that happened. Bob Good got ousted, as we discussed yesterday briefly with Joan. That was a possibility. No improvement at all for, the 5th district. Certainly not in terms of the Republicans that they've nominated. And I don't know if there's any... I don't know what the chances are of reversing things in there. But anyway, yeah, so they replaced Bob right, exactly. Greg says, Bob not so good, with somebody else who we discussed briefly yesterday. And, the cookie cutter kind of thing. A arch conservative and Navy SEAL. Terrific. And we've done so well with those. And not, as I mentioned, not hardly any of them are raping people or keeping people captive in their basement or any of those things. Look, one bad apple, what can I tell you? It can spoil the bunch. It can happen. Here in the 10th district, of course, the retiring Jennifer Wexton, that is to say she's retiring from the position, not that she was a retiring personality, it has also seen a successor chosen, and I'm going to have to work on pronunciation here on this one because it's not exactly rolling off of my tongue, I guess. But he's familiar to me in that he was our state senator in the area. Suhas, it's Subramaniam, is my best work at pronouncing. And it's funny, too, because, a number of things. Not the least of which is that we all have a Twitter pal by a similar surname, but as it's on Twitter, we never pronounce it out loud. And I feel like I missed out on the opportunity to practice with the last name. But at any rate, Suhas Subramaniam, I believe, won the 10th district primary yesterday. Fairly convincingly, 12-way race, and to come out with over 30% of the vote in a 12-way race is pretty convincing. It was relatively close with Dan Helmer, who had run, I think, at one point earlier on in the primary, maybe the first primary that Wexton initially won. So, as you know, it's a fairly blue district, despite the fact that it is chiefly composed of Loudoun County. And I say that only because so many of you, not you, because you've been listening to the show, so many of those out there in the country who are depriving themselves of Kagro in the Morning listenership for whatever reason have come to the understanding through Glenn Youngkin's propaganda and Chris Rufo's propaganda that Loudoun County is some sort of hotbed of reactionary MAGA Republicanism, a fact that they that isn't true, for one thing, and that they claim that they bolster by pointing out that, yes, Loudoun County is among the highest in per capita income in the United States, although there are certainly areas that you would consider to be far more affluent. It's just that the average is not as even, I don't know, what are we saying? The mean is not as high. That is to say, there are some fabulously wealthy individuals that influence the entire area around them and turn it into an affluent area, but not everyone nearby shares in that affluence. We're socialists here, man. Not really, but, the per capita income is rather high. But it's not a reactionary Republican region. Youngkin never won here, didn't even win in the school districts, as I told you, that he was targeting in his campaign. Now, of course, stories are popping up. Whatever happened to Glenn Youngkin? How come he didn't ever produce anything? Anyway, here in Loudoun County, the Democrats have mobilized, are moving people up the conveyor belt from state representative, which is, I think, where I initially encountered Suhasi, came and knocked on the door when he was campaigning first time around, moved up to state senate, I think, when Wexton stepped up, and now follows her into Congress. So we're doing pretty good here. It's not bad. And a very diverse field of candidates that all did very, very well. So I don't know. I would say it was a good day to help explode the incorrect impression that many people have been given, forced upon them, about Loudoun County. Greg Dworkin is here to round up the rest of the news. I'm done. I told you about what happened in my neighborhood. I walked around the block. News over. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Okay.
The old joke, when Bill Gates and I walk into a bar, the average income goes up considerably.
Yes, exactly. And here I, like your old joke about assignment desk editors, I took a walk around the block. I saw some yard signs. That's the news. I saw what happened in my neighborhood on the way to work, and everyone go investigate that now.
Well, Virginia 10 is a really interesting district.
I find it very interesting.
Parts of the Shenandoah Valley, but also, it wasn't always blue. I mean, Wexler sort of did that.
Well, okay. I mean, I say she benefited from the movement towards blue, but she certainly helped solidify it in Congress. She changed our
she was
congressional
good. She was good enough so that people said, okay, I'll go along with this. So
yeah.
And should he win, which I believe he will.
I think he should win. Don't you?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, he'll be the first Indian American representative from Virginia in the U.S. Congress.
That's probably pretty likely. And really, honestly, I mean, I've mentioned it before. I haven't really concentrated on it, but if you're here and on the ground and looking at the demographics of Loudoun County, the heart of the district, you would probably say to yourself, there's going to be an Indian American representative in higher levels of government here fairly quickly. It's a very tech-heavy district.
We've come a long way from Akaka.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Holy cow. You could never, I mean, he didn't get away with that. So we know he could never get away with it now because he didn't get away with it then, and it's only, conditions have only improved.
But, he, meaning George Allen, thought it was okay to say.
He did, and he thought the real Virginia would reject them, and there's a very, very, very strong Indian American contingent here. And by the way, a very strong Muslim population. I guess we say Muslim American. They are Muslims and American, but I mean, mixing the metaphors, sort of a religion but okay, we say Jewish Americans. So Muslim Americans, strong contingent here too. And I think the third place finisher, it was a person of very obvious, in the naming department, Arabic heritage. It's, I think, Atif Qarni, Qarni, I believe was the spelling of the last name. I'll have to double check that. But he too, garnering over 10% of the vote in a 12-way race. So, that was it's a pretty good showing for the candidates as yet representing unrepresented constituencies in the race for Congress. It's a good day, really.
Mm. So, the other news, of course, is Virginia 5.
Right, half of 10, if you ask me.
Less than half, I would say.
Okay.
And Bob Good, who's terrible,
Yes.
lost to a fellow named John McGuire.
Good.
Now, when I say lost, I don't know that the race has been called yet. McGuire is something, depending upon who you read, something like a 315 to 325 vote lead.
McGuire. You complete counting me.
And there's only about 200 provisionals out there as far as anybody can figure. For those who go into the weeds and really try to figure out what's going on. It's interesting because both of them are election deniers.
So
but
you're both
it'll be interesting to see how Bob Good reacts to denying this election.
Yeah, why not? It's all rigged, as he frequently says. It's going to be very interesting. As part of the discussion yesterday with Joan about just trying to unravel the Republican Civil War, I'm going to be very interested to see what Bob Good sort of does with himself, and when he walks away thinking, I was one of the biggest Donald Trump supporters there was. Of course,
but you made the mistake of endorsing Ron DeSantis, and the fact that you're head of the Freedom Caucus didn't make any difference.
Right. And it was an early decision, too, kind of when it wasn't, I mean, Trump had always said he was running for re-election, but I don't know. At that point, everybody sort of thought, but really, will he do the work again? He's probably not. He's probably just saying that. And everybody knows that the successor, the magazine covers all said it's Ron DeSantis. So I'm just choosing him because he's the next best thing, you see. No, it didn't work.
Well,
Didn't work.
So, the big news, there's a lot of big news, but the big news were two stories. Of course, today's Juneteenth, so that's always a big news story. But the death of Willie Mays.
Right.
And therefore, the death of my childhood, because, the Mick and
the biggest hero going.
Yeah. And Willie and the Duke, they're all gone.
Yeah.
So I put a clip up on the Pundit Roundup, the last piece there, of Vin Scully, the longtime Dodgers announcer, started with the Brooklyn Dodgers, moved to L.A. with them, talking with Willie about how good Willie was. And they're telling some interesting stories. And, of course, a lot of the discussion revolves around what's known as the catch, that's capitalized, which happened in the World Series, the year I was born, 1954.
I see.
Game 1 of the 54 World Series. It's at the Polo Grounds in New York City, where the Giants played.
Yes.
And center field was even bigger than Yankee Stadium. It was, 490 feet. It was just enormous.
Yeah, that fed horses in it, so,
And Mays is playing center field. And it's late in the game. The score's tied. And Sal Magley, the barber, is the Giants' starting pitcher. He later pitched for the Dodgers as well. So he walks Larry Doby, Cleveland Indians, and then Al Rosen singles. So there's runners on first and second. And Leo DeRocher, Leo the Lip, who's managing the Giants, who also went on to manage the Dodgers. It's a small town, New York. Brings in a left-hander to pitch to Cleveland's Vic Wertz, who's also a left-handed batter. And the left-handed pitcher is named Don Little, Liddle.
All right.
Who's really very funny, described as laconic.
Okay.
Little pitches to Wertz, okay, and he hits the pitch about 425 feet to deep center field. Remember, there's men on base. And Willie Mays turns around and, without looking, just runs to the spot and catches the ball like nobody thought he would possibly ever get there. But wait, there's more. There's men on base. So he has the wherewithal to turn around and get the ball back to the infield so that they can't advance. That's the catch.
Yeah. I mean,
and so after the game, they asked the pitcher, Don Little, so what'd you think? And Little said, yeah, I got him.
Pitchers, I don't know. Like doctors, they always think they're the ones that did it all.
Well, he's left-handed. Left-handers are always flaky, right?
Yeah.
It was me. I did it. I got him out. But it says right there in the box score. Don't argue with me.
That's pretty funny. Yeah. All right. Well, credit. I don't know. Credit where credit is due, I guess. He threw the pitch in such a way that it was hit in a way that it was also chased down, caught.
Right. So when Vin Scully's discussing this with Mays, he says, of course, the catch. I mean, you're the greatest. He starts out by saying, you're the greatest player ever.
Okay.
And certainly my favorite. And I say that even though you were wearing the wrong uniform. And Mays just cracks up.
Okay.
Which is true. The Dodgers and Giants hate each other. Because San Francisco and L.A. hate each other. Like, you know.
Yeah, and then, of course, I mean, if you go all the way back in history. Right, so cross-town rivals. And
they're
then
good friends like
Michigan
Michigan and Ohio State. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, yeah. Well,
like
that's
the Yankees
the
and the Red Sox love each other. So, and he was laughing. But Scully says to them, you know, and my friends and I were talking about this after the game. Now, this was back in '54, and this conversation's happening in the '90s.
Okay.
Scully was an announcer for a long, long time.
Yes.
So they're both out.
It's a long game.
And Scully says, so, you know, that catch is just amazing. But that wasn't the great thing. You know, the catch was great, but that wasn't the great thing. And Mays immediately says, yeah, it was getting the ball back to the infield. And Scully says, exactly. Yeah, that's what we were talking about after the game. You got the ball back to the infield, and those runners couldn't advance, and the Giants won the game 5-2 in, you know, later on. So it was did they win 5-2? They won the game. I forget what the final score was.
Well, I'll take your word for it.
Would have been 5-2 if that ball had gotten over Mays' head. But anyway, they win the game, and Mays immediately says, yeah, the catches are right. But really, the play was getting the ball back.
Well, that's baseball, yes.
That's baseball. And Scully said, and you know what? That was the second best catch you ever made.
What? The second?
And Mays looks at him and said, no, you probably don't remember the first one, but, you know, here you were at Ebbets Field, and this guy hits a screaming line drive, and you go and you get the ball, and, you know, it's on the warning track. It just, you know, was going to hit the wall if you hadn't caught it. So you're on the warning track. That's gravel. It wasn't the rubberized stuff they have these days, you know. It was gravel.
Okay,
and you keep going, and you hit your head on the concrete wall.
Oh.
Fall down,
concrete, jeez, what
and
are we
hold
doing?
the ball like you're out. You're out. You're just lying on your back.
Wow.
And your teammate runs over and takes the ball out of the glove and holds it up and says, "You got it.
This is it.
That's the best catch you ever."
Wow. Certainly the most selfless.
I remember that. This is the count. This is how many people are on base. This is what happened. You know.
Wow.
Over a long career to just remember the details like that. It's just amazing.
I'll say. Well, that is pretty amazing, and I don't know if I've ever seen any film of that one, but the catch, but not the conk your head on the wall one. I don't know.
Right. Anyway, great player.
Incredible.
And, just the other thing that Scully said is the thing is like you played the outfield like you were a shortstop. You just charged every ball. It was just wonderful. Nobody else has ever done what you did, and it was great to see. Yeah. And of course, in the days when Duke Snider was playing center field for the Brooklyn Dodgers, Mickey Mantle for the Yankees, and Willie Mays for the New York Giants, it was just, you know, baseball heaven. They were all great in their own way, but Mays was just a cut above the rest.
Yeah, well, it was certainly a golden age, and nothing like it since, of course. But lots of good baseball still being played, but it must have been something to have that many, just so many competitive teams in New York and the major media market, and oh my gosh, too much going on. Well, I'll have to call my dad, another favorite of my dad as well. So we'll see if I uncover any further stories. Ask him if he ever saw the catch in which he ran into the wall, although he probably did that several times. I don't know if he ever got knocked unconscious all the time. But, well, you know, they didn't have technology like pillows or padding back then. It was they used to sleep on rocks up until about the 60s, I guess. I don't know how they never thought maybe this wall should be... You know, I don't know, anything. We should protect the investment in the wall from the hard heads of our players. Anything. Ownership. What can you do?
Anyway, back to politics. So,
right.
You know,
head on into
in addition to the primaries, we got this election going on. Still early, but, you know, there's some good news, some bad news, some depressing news, some hopeful news, you know, depending on how you want to look at it.
Right, Abby.
One of the interesting things... Jill Lawrence has a piece in the Bulwark today If Trump loses, we might owe the Supreme Court.
But I'm not paying.
Yeah, well.
Okay, I mean,
that's because you're not Harlan
I'm
Crow.
Just not.
Only Harlan Crow pays.
Yeah, that's true. That's something. If he loses the election, Harlan Crow definitely wants his money back.
If you and Harlan Crow walk into a bar, then that'll be remarkable, because why would you ever go anywhere with Harlan Crow? Yeah, right.
Well, I'm certainly letting him go in the door first, and we'll see what happens,
But the average income goes up.
On the way. Yeah, that's true.
So if Trump loses, we might owe the Supreme Court. They keep handing Biden all the arguments he needs to win. So although it's causing great pain and upset to tens of millions of people, and it's not done yet.
Pain and upset.
But they couldn't ask for better material to run on, whether the issues abortion, guns, or the rule of law, and pondering if presidents are like kings, and if so, how much. Sometimes there's a ruling for that. There's an act for that.
Yeah.
Sometimes two, sometimes three. And if there isn't yet, there will be. The dramatic case that'll come first to mind for most people is the Dobbs decision, Dobbs-Roe, revoking the constitutional right to abortion access. But there's the Braun decision.
There's more. Yeah.
Brune.
I don't know how they pronounce it, actually. Like
Bruen. Firearms is terrible, whatever it is.
Yes.
There's a March 2024 decision neutering the 14th Amendment that's supposed to bar insurrectionists and their enablers from running for or holding for federal office.
They didn't mean that one.
There's the opinion last month upholding racial gerrymandering, and then there's the bump stocks.
Yep. One man, one vote, 200 bullets. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just saying, one man, one vote, 200 bullets is the new standard.
Yeah.
That is the confluence of these things. But yes, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt and disrupt the flow. Where were we going?
One man, one shot, but many, many times.
Yes.
The justices said a bump stock does not turn a semi-automatic weapon into a machine gun because it doesn't make the weapon fire more than one shot with a single pull of the trigger. It uses a different mechanism to make the weapon operate like a machine gun.
Yeah.
And the liberal justices said, you're out of your freaking mind. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And the conservative justices said, look, let me show you these charts and pictures about how the gun works, which I got off of a white supremacist website here.
And they're not right. But yeah, it is pretty remarkable. And honestly, this kind of parsing, like, okay, this doesn't turn it into a machine gun. I have a couple of quibbles with that. But of course, if you just, here's a video of the gun firing. And if it's firing at you, to borrow again from my cousin's video, I ask you, would you care, right? What kind of, all right, well, look, you tell me what's firing at you. It's not a machine gun. Yeah, do you care?
Can't hurt me with that gun. You called it a clip and not a magazine.
Right. I mean, you're dead just the same, and it's a lot of bullets. And the guy went and bought it because he thought, how can I, as a single shooter,
kill as many people as possible in the
600 people from my hotel room? Well, I'll probably need a bump stock for that because my finger will get tired.
Exactly.
But thank God
we can't
it's
have
not
a tired
machine
finger.
gun.
That's,
Right. And I can't buy a machine gun, so I won't. I'll just buy this other kind. But the other thing that it was interesting that they sort of ignored, and I guess if here's a failing that bothers me, is that sometimes those people who are making the reasonable argument that either, yes, it is a machine gun, or even if it isn't, it doesn't matter, they're never prepared with charts and pictures and everything and pointing out, well, the reason you don't want to rule about machine guns is the fact is that every semi-automatic firearm on the market can fire just like that. And it's true that bump stocks don't turn a gun into a machine gun, but that's because all of them are already machine guns. In YouTube, you want to use online resources, YouTube is chock full of videos to show you exactly how any semi-automatic weapon, handguns included, can fire just like that with no additional equipment. They'll just show you, here's how you hold it, here's how you manipulate the trigger, and people are emptying the clips of regular Glock handguns in machine gun fashion with one pull of the trigger. And I suppose if they really wanted to parse that and take a look at that at the Supreme Court, they'd be faced with, actually almost every gun on the market fires like this, and maybe, we've made a terrible mistake. But I don't know. No one has pointed that one out to the Supreme Court somehow. But it is true, and you can verify it very quickly. On YouTube yourself, if you're listening at home, just go and search for bump firing or bump fire. And if you want specifics, bump fire a Glock, bump fire a pistol, and they'll show you exactly how it's done. People are only too thrilled to blow holes in things out in the countryside with their standard issue off-the-rack pistols and handguns.
So Joe Lawrence goes on to say, it's a prime example of a recurring problem for Trump as MAGA followers and Republicans in general. The court's rulings mean that politically inconvenient and sometimes traumatic reminders keep surfacing.
Yes.
By July, for example, the court will decide whether people under domestic violence restraining orders should be allowed to own guns.
Machine guns.
January 6th Capitol attack will be back in the news. Mm-hmm. Did the January 6th rioters try to obstruct an official proceeding? Did Trump? And should Trump have absolute immunity? These are all questions that may come up before the election, although the absolute immunity may not come up till 2029 if they have their way.
I say yes. Well, they're dragging their feet on it.
We can't decide what to do. We're going to give it to Alien Cannon.
And don't settle that before the election. What kind of office are we voting on here? I don't know. What kind of person is it that we're looking to elect to this office? Can't really settle that either. There's supposed to have been a trial on that. What sort of powers are we granting them? Let you know after the fact. Go vote. I mean, wow, this is pretty remarkable. That thanks for the information, guys. I really appreciate it.
The Nixon tapes didn't take this long.
Yeah,
just saying.
Well, they've really screwed things up for. So people will be voting maybe for the first time that the general electorate will actually go to the polls thinking, the Supreme Court, holy cow, we should actually be paying attention to this. People try to bring it up every time, but it just doesn't catch on as a...
Well, this time it might.
Yeah, I think so. All right, well, we'll be right back to guarantee that that's the case somehow. I'll think of a way in 2 minutes.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I had the sound down for some reason, and we're back. And Greg has just sent me the 30-second ad in which how did you put it? That
it's a new Joe Biden Post ad, as the New York Times initially says. Biden campaign ad paints Trump as a felon, suggesting it's an open question.
Well,
this is David Kurtz writing for the Talking Points memo. And the headline, after a lot of complaints online, was subsequently amended to read, Biden campaign ad calls attention to Trump's felon status. A more accurate description.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit better. It's a good one. And, of course, his being painted is funny, too, of course. Painted orange.
In the courtroom, we see Donald Trump for who he is. He's been convicted of 34 felonies, found liable for sexual assault, and he committed financial fraud. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's been working, lowering healthcare costs and making big corporations pay their fair share. This election is between a convicted criminal who's only out for himself and a president who's fighting for your family.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Yeah, as standard campaign ads go, and one for the president, of all things, that is pretty strong. And a great sound, by the way.
Yeah.
Good sound engineering there. Thumbs up for the technicians behind that one. Mugshot on display, and then happy Joe Biden.
So that's part of a $50 million investment in battleground states.
All right.
And so, well, why isn't Biden? Well, usually he is. It's just he's not doing it in the time frame you want, which is yesterday.
Yeah. That's another thing, right? Why isn't he putting out an ad that says this? And, by the way, how long does it normally take to actually put together an ad of decent quality and then, distribute it to the stations and actually pay them and get it on the air? It isn't something you could. It's not like sending an email.
Right. And as you said, in terms of placing the Supreme Court at the center of the campaign, he's certainly doing that. It's not just about January 6th and democracy. That's not the only thing that he's doing. Mm-hmm. He's also placing the Supreme Court and decisions made in terms of how it affects you. Trump is getting, at a fundraiser with Obama in L.A., he said Trump's getting to a point predicted 2 more justices is one of the scariest parts of the presidency. He's going to appoint 2 more justices who are going to fly flags upside down.
Yeah, great.
Good. Tell people. They don't know. Right. You have to tell them.
Hello, everybody, listen. Okay. Well, I hope they're listening this time, and there's certainly some additional attention paid to it. Flag enthusiasts who are very upset, there's at least that.
Yeah, the American Legion is not happy.
Oh, yeah. I didn't
even
think to ask
you screwed up the flag. You had to respect the flag. That's our thing. And this is not good. You never do that.
It is pretty interesting, yeah. And I know that I thought, now that I think about it, I mean, in the moment, it occurred to me that they would probably be upset about it. Not the American Legion per se, but veterans groups in general, and they are certainly one of them. But the
American Legion has appointed itself the spokesperson for flag etiquette.
I mean, that's really true. That's the case. They I mean, justified or not, this is what they do. And when Mrs. Alito offered that excuse, I mean, it's a sign of distress. Well, it's a military sign of distress. It's almost a little bit of like stolen valor-ish kind of thing there. Like, and to lean on that as the excuse is like, well, okay, it's really you were using it as a January 6th message, and everybody kind of knows it. Well, there is a legitimate use of if you're military and under threat of your life, you're being attacked, you are about to possibly make the ultimate sacrifice for your country. You were just walking around the block getting mad at your neighbors. That's not the ultimate sacrifice.
Right. Now, there's some polling stuff to discuss, which I think is important. First of all, there was a new Best in the Nation pollster, J.N. Seltzer poll in the Des Moines Register about Iowa.
Best in the Nation.
And Trump is winning by a huge amount. Biden's only getting in the low 30s. And so it's like an 18-point lead.
What?
And people looked at this and said, oh, my God, this is terrible. Biden's not going to win Iowa. Okay.
Yeah.
And, oh, no, you don't understand. As Iowa goes, so goes Michigan and Wisconsin, which may have been true in the past, but people who are doing that kind of analysis forget one important thing. And that is that the Democrats this year pulled the rug out from Iowa caucuses and said, no, we're not doing that. You are not going first. It's unfair. It's not representative. And guess what? Iowans didn't like that.
Yeah.
So when you poll Democrats in Iowa, they don't do very well right now. Is that reflective of Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania? We have no idea.
Well, they were never first, so they
were never
have
first.
That problem.
So, that is such a big factor locally that it's really hard to interpret what it means. Is she wrong? She's almost never wrong, except the pollster who's right is the pollster who's right in October, not June. Things change. So is it that big a lead? Might be. Are there other factors involved? Maybe. Is it good news for Biden? No.
Do you get more electoral votes if you win bigger? No.
But, what does it mean in terms of the election? I don't know. It was enough for Patrick Healy, who I think is one of the worst political analysts in the country, the Senate, Chris Eliza, to write an article in the New York Times about how the election is slipping away from Biden, which
in Iowa.
When you have a tie election, nothing's slipping away from anybody.
Okay, that's true. and unlikely to run away with in either direction. But yeah, and to do it based on the poll of Iowa, well, how the election is running away.
Well, I
from
don't know if
him
he did it
in
on the basis of Iowa.
Oh, okay.
There's also the New York Times Siena polls.
He was not using any particular data. He was just saying, I feel this way. Okay. I get
New
you.
polling shows the real fallout from the Trump conviction, says Politico. A new Politico magazine Ipsos poll shows Trump's criminal conviction hurts him with independents. I don't remember if we covered this.
It's not a bad idea to cover it again.
If we did, yeah.
Yes.
But in the wake of Trump's guilty verdict, we also sought to measure Americans' trust in key figures and compared the results against a survey that was taken roughly a year ago. And the data showed a drop in levels of trust among Republicans in particular, which really just highlights, it isn't just that independents mistrust the whole trial, but certainly make it a fluid election where they're willing to look at Trump as being what Biden's ads are pounding them with in the swing states, which is that he's a convicted felon. But it's also Republicans don't trust any institution. And so
even their own
when you ask about trust or this or that or anything else, the partisan reaction from Republicans is so strong that, it's like, what's the average income in the bar when Bill Gates and I are there? It just pulls everything down because their answers are always going to be zero for any Democratic initiative whatsoever.
They have very strong enthusiasm for not trusting things or not trusting things that aren't going their way.
Meanwhile, Brian Beutler has an interesting piece on his vertical, his Substack vertical called Off Message.
Right.
The Republicans feeding you cheap fakes think you're stupid.
Cheap fakes.
The clips are made to hurt Biden, but the flagrant deceptiveness could backfire. Like when they're at the G7.
Yeah.
Or they're meeting, to celebrate D-Day. And Biden looks up and he sees some paratroopers drop in.
Yeah.
And he goes to congratulate them. And Fox News will clip him turning sideways compared to the rest of the group, making it look, and certainly that's what they claim, that he's wandering off. He's not wandering off. He's coming to say hello to one of the paratroopers.
Oh, so they're... Okay. So
that's what they mean
misleading
by
editing.
Fakes.
Cheap fakes. That's an interesting word.
They do that all the time. They find that 8 seconds where Biden's in a group looking in a different direction than the others and say, look, he's Papa Joe, Grandpa Joe is wandering off again.
Yeah.
And they're doing this constantly. So if online algorithms, he writes, peg you as a person with even passing interest in politics, they'll quickly serve you viral clips, most all misleadingly edited, that make Joe Biden seem demented. Republican operatives know these snippets of footage are chum to left and right-wing social media personalities and likely to disturb more politically detached users, so they splice them in-house. Some they clip short, and because it's easy to make somebody seem lost or confused when recorded out of context.
Right.
Some edit down the view frame because it's easy to make someone look loopy when you cut out the person they're actually talking to.
Yeah.
But last week they made a mistake. On Thursday, RNC operatives posted a 31-second long video of Biden seeming to meander away from fellow leaders at last week's G7. They uploaded the clip, captioned it with rote propaganda, "What is Biden doing?" Except this time the smear job is too obvious. The wire service footage reveals Republicans used an artificially narrow frame. In full frame, it shows Biden turn to greet skydivers. As the truth was getting its pants on, the lie had already made the cover of the New York Post. But reality eventually closed the gap. Viewing the maliciously edited video alongside the full footage provides users an object lesson in modern Republican propaganda. Immoral, insulting, but there it is. Now, just because they got caught doesn't mean they're going to stop, but they did get caught.
Yeah, important to point out, but they'll continue on and hope they either, I don't know whether they even bother hoping they don't get caught when they do it.
Right. And so one of the big differences, he writes, between the anti-Biden and the anti-Trump genre is that you don't need to selectively edit the Trump clips to make them seem goofy.
It's actually hard to get
so Biden
30 seconds.
Harris campaign put out the comments he made about the boat and the battery and the sharks. And when you read it or hear it, it's, oh, my God. I think you played it.
I think
if
so.
you didn't, basically, Trump says, so I said, let me ask you a question. And he said, nobody ever asked this question. It must be because of MIT. True. My relationship to MIT. Very smart. He has no relationship to MIT. Right. He never went to MIT. His uncle went to MIT. Smart. He goes, I say, what would happen if the boat sank from its weight and you're in the boat and you have this tremendously powerful battery and the battery is underwater and there's a shark that's 10 yards over there, by the way. A lot of shark attacks. You notice that?
Yeah, 10 yards.
I watched some guys justifying. They weren't that angry. They bit off the young lady's leg because of the fact they weren't hungry, but they misunderstood who she was. They didn't really understand a young woman swimming. So it got really decimated, and other people do a lot of shark attacks. So I said, there's a shark 10 yards away from the boat. Now, don't try to explain what I just said.
I can't.
Don't, because you can't. So do I get electrocuted if the boat is sinking? Water goes over the battery, the boat is sinking. Do I stay on top of the boat and get electrocuted? Or do I jump over by the shark and not get electrocuted?
You can't.
Because I'll tell you, he didn't know the answer. He said, nobody's ever asked me that question. Right? Because it's a stupid question.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah. No one's ever asked me. And of course, he's like, oh, well, that makes me so. What he's telling me is I'm so insightful that I have asked the question that no one ever even thought to ask before, but was totally necessary the whole time. We just didn't know it. But no, in fact, it was.
When the wind really blows hard, it can blow hard enough to blow trees down. I call it a hurricane. No one's ever called it a hurricane before.
Right. Very few people know that.
Right. Did you do the one about the water and the shower head? We've talked about this in tangent at least.
Yes, that one.
But here's what he actually said.
Dishwasher and
Do you ever go into a new home where you have a shower where the water doesn't come out of the shower head? They put a restrictor on. I took all the restrictors off. I took them off. I've had the experience. I take a shower. I want that beautiful head of hair to be nice and wet. I want it to be lathered. And I get the best stuff you can buy, and I dump it all over, and then I can turn on the water, and the damn water drips out. I can't get the stuff out of my hair. You turn on the sink, the faucet, no water comes out. So you leave your hands under there. You're trying to get the water. Isn't that terrible? And that's when he went on and talked about the dishwasher. You try to do the dishes, and you spend 10 times more on electricity than you do on the water. And like nobody knows what he's talking about. And he does this all the time.
Yeah.
And when the Biden campaign highlights it, they don't have to selectively edit anything.
That's true. But yeah, you wonder not only what America, but what planet are you talking about where you go into a house and turn on the shower and no water comes out. Well, a house where the water's been turned off, that might happen, but not really generally the experience that most of us with indoor plumbing have been having.
Right.
Lately. So
sorry. He goes on to write, look, Biden skeptics don't have to take me at my word that the conventional wisdom they've inhaled is wrong. They don't have to accept that much of the media is feeding them a backward impression of Biden and Trump's relative fitness for the presidency. It's enough for now that they can see who's trying to dupe them and why, and for them going forward to apply extreme scrutiny to cheap fake clips sold as proof that Biden's lost it. These clips will always say more about the people who created and shared them than about Biden himself. And that's true. And so it's in that context, it's just so frustrating to say, well, everybody knows this, that, and everything about Biden's mental status. Yes. You don't know squat unless you've been in the room with him. And the people who are in the room with him say it ain't true.
Yeah. And then it's not enough for you that they said it isn't true. You want to hear them say it on tape that it's not true. I gave you a transcript that said it.
If it's true, why doesn't Biden go out and talk to reporters and give interviews? He does all the time.
Yeah, where are you getting
You're
this
just not freaking watching. And when you see it, you say, yeah, well,
I'll edit it so that it looks like, right. Okay. Well,
you can see it at the debate, which is why the debate's important. Which is really interesting because I still don't think Trump's going to show up, but we'll see.
And it's soon.
Yeah, it's the 27th.
When is that? I don't know where we are. 8 days from now. Okay, so next Thursday evening, I assume, is the debate. That'd be funny if they made it like in the afternoon. Just two old guys. You better do it at 2 in the afternoon.
Can't do it 2 in the afternoon.
Dinner
They're taking
time
naps.
afterwards.
You got to do it at 9 a.m.
Yeah. All right. Well. All right. Well, and so I mean, it's a big mystery. It's funny. I would at no other point in any other presidential campaign now I recall being a week out from the debate, and relatively we're relatively serious commentators I guess
relatively serious speculation about whether or not Trump's actually going to show up.
Is he going to go?
And if he goes, fine. And if not, does he blame the rules that he agreed to?
Yeah.
Like you have to shut your microphone off.
Biden should...
And no notes. That was the other thing.
Oh?
Chris Cillizza was handicapping this and say most of the rules really favor Biden, except for the one that hurts Biden, which says you're not allowed to use notes.
How
does that hurt Biden and not Trump?
I mean, maybe in that, like, he can read the notes and Trump can't, so it doesn't really hurt him that much. I don't know.
Trump can't read, so, you know, advantage Trump.
I'm not sure exactly how to...
Is he implying that Biden needs notes to do what he does?
He may rely more on, documented facts and bring them with him, so, okay, no notes, fine. I'm sure it'll come out just fine. But maybe Biden should bring a battery and a glass of water. No one understands it. It's Cillizza. It doesn't make a difference. The check has already been cashed. Does it make a difference if the words mean anything? No. But
now we should also bring in, by the way, since we're talking about politics and tri-state area stuff.
Okay.
There's a fellow named George Norcross.
A felon named George?
Soon to be.
A felon named George Norcross. I said a fella. You can't sue me.
Bob Fella, the pitcher.
Named.
The Cleveland Indians, Bob Fella. It's an old Abbott and Costello routine.
Yeah, how's your name?
So this fella's pitching. I
name?
know a fella's pitching, but what's his name? His name is Fella. Fella's pitching.
All right.
But who's the fella who's pitching?
Exactly.
An atomic bomb just fell on one of America's most powerful party bosses, writes Politico. As New Jersey's notoriously boss-driven political system faces peril, a crop of younger Democrats, named Andy Kim, are ready to dance on its grave.
All right. Great.
One of America's most deeply entrenched political machines is finally coming apart. New Jersey political insiders struggled to come up with big enough words Monday morning to describe what they were hearing. The state attorney general was about to indict South Jersey Democratic power broker George Norcross, one of the most formidable and fearsome operators in state history on corruption charges. Earthquake, atomic bomb. Norcross ruled much of New Jersey for decades and at his peak wielded power rivaling governors. His indictment is just the latest in a series of political shockwaves that have struck New Jersey over the past year. Bob Menendez, another powerful political boss held in awe by lower-level political players, is in the middle of a corruption trial.
True.
New Jersey's notoriously boss-driven political system has never been in peril like this before, at least not in living memory, and now a crop of younger New Jersey Democrats are ready to dance on its grave.
Okay.
Stephen Fulop, Jersey City mayor, says 2024 is going to go down as the most significant change New Jersey's ever seen for its electoral and political process. You may recall we have the county line stuff that we've gone over.
Right.
Where you give an advantage to your favored candidate by how you place it on the ballot.
Right.
And it matters.
Subtlety. But
Norcross was charged along with his brother Phil, former Camden Mayor Dana Redd, and 3 other longtime associates. The indictment alleges 12 years of extortion and other corruption by the Norcross enterprise at the expense of a downtrodden city located across the Delaware River from Philadelphia. Another Norcross brother, Democratic Representative Donald Norcross, is not facing any charges.
Well, all right.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, not all Norcrosses. The Norcross. Well, it is a boss-driven state, but things mostly run okay. There, so they let the kind of corruption go on. But yeah, I'm glad it's being rooted out. It's nice. It's interesting that they get commentary like that from the mayor of Jersey City. By the way, traditionally the seat of one of the people eligible to be one of those bosses, and very frequently was one of those bosses. The power migrated southward somehow to the Camden machine, but it would tend to oscillate back and forth between Newark, Jersey City, and Trenton, Camden. But yeah, it would be great to see the end of that because, although it's interesting in its own way, it sort of distributed the benefits of government evenly across the state and settled the issue of, which is the more important and where will the resources go, North Jersey or South Jersey, which was a tension for a long time, by trading off the boss role from between North and South. And I guess that's what kind of why it went on. Along with all the corruption went a lot of grease for a lot of wheels, so.
The potential downfalls of Norcross and Menendez coincide with the elimination of the county line, which bosses of both parties wielded for decades to give their candidates advantage on primary ballots. Yeah. The line enabled the party to list all of its endorsed candidates in a single row or column, generally first. Yes. Those challenging the party apparatus sometimes found themselves in obscure, hard-to-find parts of the ballot known as Ballot Siberia. Democrats in Camden County, where Norcross's powers most concentrated, were particularly notorious for the use of the county line. They were also its most vociferous defenders against Andy Kim's challenge and made headlines when several Camden County Democratic officials blocked a Democratic Senate candidate from entering party headquarters while Tammy Murphy spoke inside the building. Progressive Democrats even uncovered evidence that Camden County Democrats recruited phantom candidates just to take up space on the ballot. Okay. So they were bad people.
Yeah, and it's all like individually, each of the things that they do is like, well, that's kind of subtle, and as opposed to, well, some of the things that actually Norcross is actually accused of are less subtle and are more like, I'll break your effing legs if you don't give me some money.
Law, and there's things he did.
Yes. The choices that are made in the mechanics of running an election. Yeah, we see it all the time in the election cases we see nationally, where it's sure, everyone gets to vote. We just get to define what everyone means, or what does it mean to cast a vote, or what are we going to do with your vote once it's cast? Well, there's a stray pen mark on this thing. That's not a vote. Every place you can make an interpretation is a place you can manipulate the outcome, and these guys knew it and used the power that they got from it to grant themselves more power to do it more often and in more places.
So good riddance to them. And speaking of powers and using them, also Biden has a new policy. 500,000 undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens are going to get legal protection.
And ice cream.
MAGA is going nuts about it.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to link it to people coming across the border in waves and caravans. These are not people coming across the border. These are people who live here, who are here in the United States.
It requires, I think, the policy that you have already been here for 10 years or more.
Right. So Greg Sargent writes, this shows Fox and MAGA cannot allow the immigration debate to focus on that population because it's largely viewed sympathetically by the voting public. So this is all about Biden going rogue on the border. Well, that's why Biden did the border policy first. So he could do this.
Oh, well, that's an explanation. I mean, that did upset a lot of people, but and maybe that's an interesting point. That's a possibility, right? Do something that looks tough, and everybody says, "Why are you doing that? You're not going to get any credit from MAGA." Well, I know, but I'm looking to get some credit from people who are not MAGA, but not yet convinced and on board with our program here,
and who, by the way, may live in Arizona and Nevada.
Yeah. And in the meantime, you'll find that there's probably a lot of people occupying that mushy middle who say, well, I'm upset about the quote unquote open border thing that I keep seeing repeated on television. That makes me mad, and I live down here near the border. But that's not the same as my wife, who's been here undocumented for 20 years, but has, totally assimilated, or at least I'm willing to say so, or is part of the fabric of the community. Or, look, we pay our taxes and we've raised kids in this community, and right, exactly. We actually hear you and understand you about that, and guess what? And by the way, sometimes it's those families that are the most reactionary about current migration. That's sometimes true too, which is a little hypocritical, but
but it is what it is. I'm a hardworking person. I don't see why these people are coming and asking for stuff. I worked for what I got, et cetera, et cetera. I used to hear that all the time in my office when I spoke to my patients.
Yeah, I mean, that's a feeling that people have about themselves. It's just it's kind of natural. You kind of have to train yourself out of it. And in 10 years, all those new people will have the same claim as you. And they'll be able to avail themselves of that policy. And you can rail against the people who aren't here yet. Or
here's another common complaint about the Biden campaign.
Yeah?
Why don't they focus on kitchen table issues?
Why not? Oh, this
You know what the campaign's most run TV ad is about?
It better not be kitchen tables. Is it? It is.
Yeah, it's about butcher board.
I can't believe it. Oh, okay.
It's about Obamacare.
Oh.
Which is interesting.
That's really a doctor table issue.
And what's especially interesting is that the overall number of Americans, according to the CDC, without health insurance has dropped by 8.2 million from 2019 to now.
Okay. 2019.
In 2019, 14.7% of adults ages 18 to 64 were without health insurance, and now it's 10.9.
Okay. That is good news.
So
it's still
that
too
is
many.
very good news.
But they're running ads about
BFD.
That.
And you know what? They should.
Say.
People care about that.
Right. Take that out of context. Cheap, fake me, big effing deal. I don't mind running that as an ad.
Yeah.
He should
run
do that.
Things about insulin being cheaper, run things about Obamacare. Yeah. Those are things that are kitchen table issues that people care about.
Yeah.
Are they putting money there? Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's good. Now what am I going to complain about?
Oh, you find something to complain about. There's always something to complain about.
I can't believe there's nothing to complain about.
If you want to do it anonymously, claim to be a Democrat and complain anonymously, go talk to Axios or Politico. They'll be happy to hear from you because that's all they do.
That's true. And if you know Russian and you want to do it in Russian, that works even better. All right. Wow. Okay.
And then finally, this little tidbit.
Yes.
Right before the
break.
break.
To be final.
ABC 7 Chicago is reporting that Donald Trump plans to stay in Chicago, not Milwaukee, during the RNC next month, which is in
Milwaukee.
That horrible city, Milwaukee.
Yeah. Everybody hates it, except me.
Right. And as SV Date points out, Trump doesn't own a hotel in Milwaukee, but he does in Chicago.
That's it.
That way, the Secret Service and everybody else has to pay him to stay there.
Yeah, that's right.
Why should he give money to the Hotel Budapest in Milwaukee when, he can give it to his own pocket?
That is exactly it. I wonder why he must be yelling at Lara. How did we have the convention in a city that I don't own a hotel in? What are you, crazy? She's going to have to answer for that one. Well, that's probably it. That's the answer. And, all right. Well, we'll catch up on some more news tomorrow. What do you say? All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. How will we possibly fill another hour? Well, one of the things we'll do is however we fill it, around the end of the next hour, we'll be saying, how come this hour isn't longer? I need more time to read this story. Well, here's something. Look, this could be easily a Friday story, but I don't know if Greg's still listening. Then he will enjoy this story, I'm sure. I saw this reported first in The Guardian, which is interesting given that there's like local press, and then I found the local press on this one, and it's equally amazing in both outlets. One, The Guardian. Two, 7 Days, the famous publication up in Vermont, where we have a story that I guess kind of demonstrates nothing so much as that the Republican Party is socio/psychopaths all the way down. It's not just the top of the ticket. This is a weird thing. The short story of it is probably the real way we should spend our time on it, but because it's so weird, I'm going to spend time on the long version. And besides which, this is the local reporting from 7 Days, Vermont, 7daysvt.com. I should have opened it up a different way so that I can preserve my access to Pocket here. Look, it's crazy. Here's the deal. Lawmaker offers an apology, which is insane. I can't believe this is happening. And it's a Republican lawmaker offering an apology. That's crazy to begin with. But, along with the apology, no actual explanation. For what? For soaking a rival's stuff. Now, the story will explain it, but just to make sure that we get the story out there quick and dirty, the Guardian headline makes it a little clearer. Vermont Republican secretly poured water into colleague's bag over months. Like, it's the strangest effing thing you ever heard, except that's just a figure of speech because you've heard stranger things. But this is Kevin McCollum's reporting for 7 Days Vermont under that weirder headline, offers an apology but no explanation for soaking a rival's stuff. What happened? Representative Jim Carroll thought he was losing his mind. The Democrat from Bennington would hang his canvas tote bag on a hook outside his committee room in the State House every morning, and by the end of the day, it would often be soaking wet. He racked his brain for possible explanations. Was his bag under a leaky ceiling pipe? Did snow fall in it on his way into the building? In Vermont, that could really happen. Did he fail to secure the cap of a bottle? At his wit's end, he turned to a trusted colleague, Representative Angela Arsenault, I'm going to guess is the pronunciation of Arsenault, like a little Frenchified. She also a Democrat from Williston. And this is interesting. This is an interesting approach to the problem. And it requires, a little creative editing, reading, not eating, but reading, the other word that rhymes with eating. He asked me one day, and this wouldn't occur to me to ask as a question, but I see where he's going. Am I an a-hole? Arsenault recalled. Which I guess he's trying to, is somebody are they doing something to me? Am I being purposefully or unconsciously being an a-hole to somebody and they're trying to get revenge on me by soaking my back? I mean, what a dumb way of doing it, right? Like it doesn't mean anything. It's like flying a flag upside down around the corner from somebody who had a sign that annoyed you. No real direct confrontation, just sort of taking a petty revenge somewhere. So he asks, am I an a-hole? And Carroll explained himself. While it was going to sound crazy, his bag was repeatedly getting soaked. He was like, I think someone's doing this on purpose, Arsenault said. That someone, according to spy camera videos that Carroll released on Tuesday, was a fellow representative, Representative Mary Morrissey, a Republican of Bennington. The district mate, I guess, in the legislature. Carroll provided the two videos to 7 Days in response to a request under the State Public Records Act. That's interesting. They had to force these out of his hands, essentially. He initially declined to release them through a legislative attorney, arguing that the documents were his personal property. Interesting. Why wouldn't you want to show people what was going on? I'm not exactly sure why, but he wasn't all that excited about the prospect of revealing this Republican colleague's malfeasance for some reason, because maybe he's a decent person and he didn't want to ruin a life, but what the hell was this idiot doing? So, okay, he initially declines to release them. The paper requested them, and he declined. They appealed, pointing out that the videos were taken by a public official in a public building involving potential misconduct by a public official. Last Friday, 7 Days broke the story about the videos and a confidential ethics investigation into Morrissey's conduct. I have been very reluctant to disclose the video because I believe it will deeply embarrass Representative Morrissey. Well, good, she deserves it, but he's just not like that. However, it has become clear to me, he goes on to say, that the media are aware of the details of Representative Morrissey's behavior and likely will continue to report on that behavior in the near future. So he's got the best evidence of it. He finally gives up and releases it. The videos, which Carroll took using a small spy camera, show Morrissey. And, you can't blame her for this. She was a kid at the time, a dumb kid of 67. But here she is approaching Carroll's bag, which was hanging outside his Commerce and Economic Development Committee room, and pour a cup of liquid into it. Portions of both videos are obscured, as though the camera lens is partially blocked by something, but what it captures is perfectly clear. Morrissey's face is not shown in either video, but her distinctive shock of long gray hair leaves little doubt that it is she. Her Corrections and Institutions Committee room is directly across a State House hallway from Carroll's. The first video, taken on April 23rd at 9:10 a.m., shows Morrissey wearing a gray suit jacket enter the frame. she walks directly to Carol's white and green bag, reaches up, and, as though watering a houseplant, pours a cup of liquid into it. In the second, taken on April 26th, at 12:21 p.m., Carol sticks his arm into the bottom of the bag, apparently checking its contents. The bag has a State House logo on it, and it rests against a blue sport coat on a hanger. He then walks out of frame and walks toward his committee room. Seconds later, Morrissey, wearing a rose-colored jacket and scarf, very professional looking in both cases, pops into the frame. She quickly lifts a clear cup of water up to the top of the bag and pours the liquid in and scurries off. What that tells me is that she was watching me, Carol told 7 Days, waiting for him to hang the bag and then leave, and then taking her petty, stupid revenge. For what? We'd have no idea so far. Carol said he noticed the bag getting wet beginning in January, and it happened more frequently in February. So for months she's doing this. On February 21st, Carol, 62, was arrested for drunken driving at 8:30 a.m. In a State House parking lot. What? Wow. Okay. A Montpelier police officer noted his car muffler was too loud and then reported signs that he was impaired. He went to rehab for a couple of weeks, then returned to the State House in early March. And that's when it started happening over and over again. But it was from before that it was happening. He was arrested in February, late February. But in January it happened a couple of times. And then over and over again when he came back. Carol initially told his committee chair, Representative Mike Marcotte, a Republican of Coventry, and asked for help in figuring out how it was happening. At first we thought, is it near a source of water? Could something be dripping from the ceiling? Marcotte recalled. Carol said he brought the issue to the attention of House Speaker Jill Krowinski, once showing her his bag with ice cubes in it. Okay, he didn't do that, right? He also told former Sergeant-at-Arms Janet Miller and Capitol Police Chief John Polway, but he realized the only way to get the evidence he needed was to catch the culprit in the act. So he plotted a State House sting. He discussed the issues with Polway and decided to set up a tiny spy camera in the hallway. The $23 camera, which his brother, who lives in New York, sent to him, I don't know why that had to happen, but okay, operates remotely via an app on his phone. He said he was on solid legal ground to secretly record. There is no expectation of privacy in a public building, Carol said. He checked it out. It's a public space, and the chief backed me up on that. Polway declined to comment. Once Carol had the goods on Morrissey, he shared them with Polway, Krowinski, and others. The speaker confronted Morrissey about it, and she initially denied responsibility, Carol said. In a follow-up meeting with Krowinski, Morrissey apologized to him. He said, it was a very uncomfortable meeting, Carol recalled. He referred questions about her motives to her. In a prepared statement, Morrissey on Tuesday said she was sorry, but did not explain her actions. Quite honestly, I don't know why I did it. I was not meaning to hurt him, she said. It is something very out of character for me, and I am ashamed. I have personally apologized to Jim, and I am publicly apologizing to Jim and the legislative body in this statement. I will take every step that is needed to repair what I have done. Maybe you need to go to rehab. Asked whether she would stand for re-election, she declined to answer. Morrissey has filed to run and faces no primary challenger. After Morrissey apologized in the meeting with Krowinski, the speaker subsequently blocked her from serving on a key legislative committee. That's a good start. The matter was referred to the House Ethics Panel. The 5-member board operates in secret and only makes details about complaints public if the accused person agrees or if the panel determines that the person has, in the end, violated ethics rules. In a statement on Tuesday, Krowinski confirmed the basic details of the story and added that she had recommended Carol file an ethics complaint. The status of the complaint is unclear. This is truly a disturbing situation that is at odds with our legislative practices, where they usually just vote and stuff, not throw water on each other. I strive to ensure that our time in the State House is focused on collaborative, bipartisan work on behalf of all Vermonters. The integrity and decorum of our legislative proceedings and of legislators are of paramount importance, and any actions or behaviors that compromise these values will be thoroughly investigated and addressed. I want to assure everyone that the matter is being taken seriously. I mean, it's kind of psychotic. Representative Martin Lalonde, Democrat of South Burlington, chair of the House Ethics Panel, declined to be interviewed or even acknowledge that the complaint had been filed. A complaint had been filed, so he's not even sure that it has, but I guess it has. Krowinski said she herself doesn't know the status of the complaint. Minority Leader Representative Patty McCoy, Republican of Poultney, who was present when Krowinski confronted Morrissey, did not respond to multiple messages seeking comment. No one wants to talk about it, I guess. Well, a few of the people directly involved will talk about it. In his statement, Carroll said various factors played into his decision to release the videos on advice of counsel. Continuing to withhold the video would only subject me to continued and more amplified media criticism, litigation, and continued warnings of more litigation to follow. So, by the way, I mean, it's interesting and all, but way to really focus there. I mean, this, I guess I'll be critical of the people who are actually reporting this thing, the 7 Days Vermont. But I mean, in the end, you are like making trouble for and litigating with and using up the time of the victim in these circumstances. And he's like trying to be the bigger person about it. And you're harassing him and taking him to court. And finally, he's like, well, why should I be spending any more time on this? And she's the a-hole in all this. Fine, here's the videos. You know, I wonder, there should be a story in here from, maybe there is, I don't know, but I will look around maybe. If anybody has ever spotted, if there's a story from 7 Days saying, hey, we apologize to Jim Carroll for making his life miserable for a couple of months. We thought he was hiding something that someone else was doing for some political gain, but it turns out he was actually just, I guess, maybe trying to be in compliance with the law, make sure he was on solid legal footing, plus also solve this problem, and then just not mortify some other member of the legislature, even though it was a person who clearly had it coming to them and is, you know, I mean, as far as political motivation, not the same party, so it wasn't a protection scheme. It was just, I don't know, this person doesn't deserve to have their life ruined, but okay, you guys have decided that they should have their life ruined. So here you go. Here's the video. Well, he added, by the way, I believe it is right that I release the video and be fully transparent to my constituents and all Vermonters. If there's any bad blood between Carroll and Morrissey, he claims he's unaware of it. That's why he was asking, am I an a-hole? Morrissey was injured in Bennington. Is this some sort of explanation for it? Maybe. Morrissey was injured in Bennington in 2000, a quarter century ago, 2000, when a blind horse, this is only Vermont, can you get this? A blind horse named Joker got loose from its enclosure and knocked her to the ground. So F horses, right? And blind horses. I'm going to pour water in another guy's bag. Well, the owners she sued the owners, Rhoda and Tim Carroll. Okay. Is that a brother, a relative? I mean, we are talking about, this is Jim Carroll, but a blind horse owned by one Tim Carroll knocked her down a quarter century ago. She sued and lost. The court said, sorry, can't help you, I guess. I don't know why. Carroll said, this is interesting, Carroll said there is no relationship whatsoever between that Carroll clan and his family. Wow. So not even that. His father, Joe Carroll, and Morrissey's father, Jerry Morrissey, were longtime politicians in the town, both serving on the select board and in other roles. Okay. Well, they came from very different political viewpoints, Carroll said. But that said, he never noticed any animosity between his father and the Morrisseys. There's just nothing there. I mean, it was great to get around to the blind horse story. Regardless of Morrissey's motivation, Arsenault said she wanted the matter made public because it highlights behavior she considers both juvenile and unconscionable. After returning from rehab, Carroll needed the support of his colleagues, not their harassment, she said. This is the type of thing that is designed to make someone feel like they're going nuts, to make someone question themselves, Arsenal said, which to me is straight up cruel. So, wow, that is, it is straight up cruel. It's just what a weird way of manifesting it. The Guardian report on the situation, I don't know. I mean, I guess it just sort of summarizes things more briefly. It doesn't now. I don't think it has the blind horse story. But yeah, I'm just trying to skim to see whether there was any more statements that would help us make any sense of this at all. But there's some language in this one. Let's see. According to Carol, Morrissey initially said that she flicked water on the bag because she saw a bug on it. I mean, wow, that's like upside down flag because it's an international distress, a stupid attempt at sort of semi-justifying but then for weeks on end pouring your water, ice and all, into the bag. There's no bug on it anymore. But once I flicked water on it because I saw a bug, and I mean, who doesn't solve bug problems that way? And by the way, super buggy Montpelier, Vermont, in the middle of winter. But okay, she saw a bug on it. She flicked water on it. But once I got a taste for water flicking, there was no stopping me. I found myself having to pour more and more and more water on it just to satisfy my urge to move water from one place to another. Just so long as that other place was Jim Carroll's canvas book bag. What? That's just nuts. But anyway, okay, I initially flicked water on it because I saw a bug on it. But she later added that she didn't know why she decided to dump water on Carol's bag for months on end. And not even on the bag, in it, like into the top, ice and everything. At the end of the meeting, I looked at her, Carol said, and said, this has really effed me up. He uses the big word too here. There were weeks when I didn't know who was doing this or why, Carol said. I walked around this place paranoid of my fellow legislators, racking my brain, trying to think what could I have possibly said or done. And, typical Democrat, I guess, in that fashion, right? What have I done? Why is this must be my fault? He's the victim of this whole thing, and he's trying to figure out, psychologically, it is pretty damaging. Why is this happening to me? What have I done to deserve this? And all it is some effing psycho, who just, by the way, happens to be a Republican. There's only two choices here. There's no independent psychos, obviously. I'm sure there's plenty. But just, what kind of personality does it take to continue to do this? And I'm sure I never meant to hurt him, but it would never, ever, ever in a million years occur to the kind of person who would be a conservative Republican legislator, would just probably never understand or have empathy for, hey, this is psychologically damaging to someone else. Well, so what? I don't even fucking care. That's it. Maybe I'm stereotyping, but I don't know. That's why I thought this story was actually somewhat important. Plus, of course, the blind horse thing. It's astonishing. Anyway, Carol said that he was still weighing whether he should pursue charges against Morrissey for the harassment. As for whether he forgives Morrissey, Carol said, I guess I would have to say yes in the spirit of forgiveness, also something unfamiliar to Republicans, reluctantly. But if I had to be a smartass, I'd say her apology holds about as much water as my canvas bag. I gotcha. Yeah, not a great joke, but I don't know what to tell you. I'm just astonished that there are such people, and they're legislators. It is crazy, isn't it? All right. Some other stories to share with you that are maybe more to the point of what we usually consider on the show. How about this? How about a New Republic piece? Is it from Tim Noah? Yes. Who writes on the Trump, I guess you could, ordinarily with a normal presidential candidate, you would say a Trump proposal, a Trump tax proposal, except this is just kind of blatherings at one of his rallies. It's not entirely clear. Like, for instance, I'm not certain whether this appears in Project 2025 or anything, or whether this is something that he just made up on the fly and blurted out, and now we're all forced to treat it as a serious policy pronouncement. But most of you would recognize it from let's say, history class, if you remember anything from it, as an historic callback and a callback to a terrible idea at that. This was Trump floating the idea the other day that maybe we should get rid of all income taxes and replace it instead with tariffs. Remember, he has a very difficult time understanding tariffs. He's fairly certain that other countries pay tariffs as opposed to the people who are ultimately consuming the goods that we import. You remember that his idea when he was president was, I'm going to raise tariffs on China, and then that'll be like China is paying the money we need, the revenue we need to run our government, because they'll pay the tariffs when we import their goods, as opposed to, no, they sell the goods to us here in America, and in order for our petty bureaucratic officials to allow us to move them from off the boats in the port into the heart of the country and then to retail outlets to sell to people, we have to pay the government for the privilege of maintaining that border for us, which, remember, he loves borders and stuff. But we have to pay a fee to the government. But it's us, the people who are importing the things, not the people who are exporting them. But he refuses to acknowledge that, just as he refuses to acknowledge, no, that hurricane wasn't going to hit Alabama. But I said it is. And here, I'm going to draw this. I'm just going to say China pays the tariffs. Anyway, I guess somebody, Tim Noah at the New Republic, has decided to play the game, which I ordinarily recommend people not play, which is, let's pretend this is an actual policy pronouncement. What would happen if we implemented it? Replacing taxes with tariffs would take us back to the 1800s. And that's sort of a point that we didn't make when we discussed it the first time. The first point that we discussed was the financial point. Oh, the creaky chair today. The fiscal point of, we collect far, far more revenue in income taxes than we ever collect in tariffs. So in order to replace the revenue that we got from income taxes with revenue from tariffs, we'd have to quadruple tariffs. We'd have to be paying 50% tariffs or more on everything that got imported. And even then we wouldn't bring in as much money. But even then, it's worth reminding everybody that would be hugely regressive. And people who are living hand to mouth or who are ordinary Americans shopping at Walmart, where hardly anything is produced in the United States anymore, will be paying twice the price. They will notice that the low prices at Walmart are now actually high prices. That won't bother the billionaires who will be reveling in the fact that they are paying no income tax. But in addition to it being regressive and almost impossible to make up that kind of revenue, it does bring us back to, the days before the implementation of an income tax here in the United States. We didn't always have it. And I wonder, hasn't been selling this plan as an originalist idea, but I guess you could. But the founders actually sort of envisioned that this is the way that we would generate most of our revenue. There wasn't any income tax in the original Constitution. So it would bring us way back, but also things you might remember from your history class. If you don't remember that there was no income tax originally and that the United States raised most of its revenue from tariffs, you'll remember something about tariffs, maybe. Tariffs, bad, right? And you might remember that in the 1920s, when it was proposed, let's raise tariffs so that we can raise revenue even more for the federal government, and that actually helped send us into a tailspin economically. And it was generally taught that, one of the causes or one of the factors that exacerbated the Great Depression was this relatively enormous rise in tariffs. And we're generally taught bad thing, like court packing, bad. Well, why? It didn't happen. And it panicked people, and it was blocked. But is that therefore bad? I don't know. But you were also taught around the same time, probably in history, the same week, you might have learned about the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act and how vilified that is, and maybe rightly so. But anyway, Back to the New Republic. Replacing taxes with tariffs would take us back to the 1800s. Very true. And that now sets you up. You can ponder that and ponder whether or not you remember your history, high school history, over the next 2 minutes. But this setup is supplemented with a subheader that reads, Trump a populist? Populism came about to lower tariffs. Yes, that's a good point too, right? One of the big motivators that helped the populist movement break out in the first place was, hey, this is breaking the backs of ordinary people. They're having to shoulder the vast majority of the burden of funding the federal government, wherein railroad barons and other sorts of barons, there were plenty of other kinds of barons, were rolling in it, and no one was taking any piece of that action at all. What about an income tax to have the ultra-wealthy pay their fair share? Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the 18th century, or the 1800s anyway, the 19th century, here on Kagro in the Morning on Netroots Radio. All right, so we've got to get all the usual components of the welcome back in. And now let's dive in. Why not? Replacing taxes with tariffs would take us back to the 1800s. Trump a populist? Populism came about to lower tariffs. I know, a little bit weedy, but good information. Mitt Romney, who I didn't expect to lead off this story. Mitt Romney probably blew his chances of becoming president in May 2012 when he suggested to a room full of wealthy people at a Boca Raton, Florida fundraiser that America spoils its lower-income citizens by not taxing them enough. Yeah, that wasn't very good. And in fact, he reviews this as stupid, stupid, stupid. Romney wrote in his diary after Mother Jones's David Corn reported his remarks, according to McKay Coppins' 2023 biography, Romney, a Reckoning. That's, stupid, stupid, stupid. That's the point, not where the sourcing was. But okay, now Donald Trump has amplified Romney's error by stating explicitly that the progressive income tax ought to be replaced by tariffs. That would do Romney one better by returning the United States economy to the 19th century. The Washington Post's Catherine Rampell was quick to point out that eliminating the income tax and substituting revenue from tariffs would constitute a huge tax increase on the lower and middle income classes. Unlike Romney, Trump seldom gets held accountable for anything that comes out of his mouth, so maybe he'll sail past this gaffe. Whatever the fallout, Trump's suggestion is stupid, stupid, stupid. During the past 4 decades, the U.S. income tax got less progressive at the high end, but more progressive at the low end, thanks to the Earned Income Tax Credit and the Child Tax Credit. Conservatives love that the top marginal rate has fallen from 70% in 1980 to 37% today. and that other taxes that target the wealthy, such as the corporate tax, the capital gains tax, and the inheritance tax, have all come crashing down. But the right doesn't like that the proportion of the population too poor to pay income tax doubled after 1980 from about 20% of the population to about 40%. In Mitt's heyday, famously, it was roughly 47%. Conservatives bemoan that even though the change resulted from conservative policies, or bemoan this even though it came from their policies, the Earned Income Tax Credit was signed into law by Republican Gerald Ford and expanded by none other than Republican Ronald Reagan, both presidents hailing it as a conservative alternative to welfare, as did Democrat Bill Clinton when he expanded it further. The child tax credit was created under Clinton, but championed by pro-family conservatives. Congressional Republicans now refuse to restore its COVID-era expansion, which nearly halved the child poverty rate. Oh, success? Better get rid of that. Poor folks should pay more taxes has a Dickensian ring to it, so conservatives seldom say it out loud. A memorable exception was a 2002 Wall Street Journal editorial titled "The Non-Tax-Paying Class," which branded those unable to earn enough to pay income tax lucky duckies because of how poor they were. So lucky. And of course, they're paying plenty in sales taxes along the way. And tariffs, of course, that are passed on to them through sales. Various commentators, including me, says Tim Noah, had a field day with that, driving this doctrine underground, where it has largely remained ever since, with the exception of Romney, of course. Thereafter, Republicans spoke of this only through the code phrase, broaden the tax base. When called on it, they pretended they meant only to close certain, never specified loopholes, not to raise taxes on the proletariat. That was Romney's strategy in 2012 until he blew his cover by griping about the 47%. Yeah, you remember that, how he did that. And here a poll quote from it. Those who are dependent on government, who believe that they are victims, who believe that the government has a responsibility to care for them, who believe that they're entitled to health care, to food, to housing, you name it. These are people who pay no income tax. Wow, imagine that. The idea that people who don't pay income tax inhabit a sort of Skinner box that trains them to regard government as cost-free and munificent rather than costly and burdensome, and therefore to vote Democratic. Never mind that these people still pay regressive payroll and assorted state taxes, and the higher end of this cohort has been lately voting Republican, by the way. More respectable conservatives don't suggest, as Trump does, that the income tax ought to be replaced with tariffs, partly because they tend not to favor tariffs, or didn't before Trump came along. But the respectable right has long chafed at the progressive income tax. It prefers an across-the-board flat tax of, say, 17%, or failing that, to collapse the existing 7 tax brackets into, say, 2, as the Heritage Foundation's Mandate for Leadership 2025, there's the answer, a sort of shadow manifesto for the Trump campaign, proposes. Such proposals get sold as tax simplification, but their chief value to conservatives is that they make the tax code more regressive. Were there no income tax already, it's doubtful in this dismal political moment that Republicans would permit one to be created. Before 1913, the United States had no income tax, except, briefly, to finance the Civil War. My heritage. Anyway, with 2 brackets of 3 and 5%. Virtually all federal revenue came from tariffs on manufactured goods. These were popular in the industrial Northeast because they protected the livelihoods of factory workers, but they were unpopular among farmers, especially in the South, because they enjoyed no parallel protection. For them, tariffs served only to raise prices. Much of the impetus for the populist movement in the late 19th and early 20th centuries was agrarian resistance to high tariffs. The man who says, impose upon somebody else a tax for my benefit, says what the pickpocket says. That was Representative William Jennings Bryan, Democrat of Nebraska, in 1892. But the man who says, take away the burdens imposed on me for other people's benefit, says simply what every honest man says. Let me alone to enjoy the results of my toil. That's the way people spoke back then, I guess. Congress tried to revive the Civil War income tax in 1894, but the Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional. It took a constitutional amendment proposed in 1909 by a Republican, President William Howard Taft, in fact, to bring back the income tax. When reintroduced in 1913, it was very low, with brackets of 1% and 6%, and limited to high incomes. In today's dollars, the two thresholds were $96,000 and $16 million. So the only way you'd be taxed more than 1% of your income back then was if you were making over what today would be $16 million. The modern income tax, with employer withholding and the federal government largely eliminating its reliance on regressive tariffs and excise taxes, was created in 1943 by President Franklin Roosevelt. Roosevelt, of course, justified it as a wartime measure, much as President Herbert Hoover justified an earlier increase in 1932 as an emergency measure necessary to fight the Great Depression. Interesting that it was a Republican idea in 1932. We can fight depression by raising taxes. Okay? Well, both presidents set the top marginal rate well above current levels. Let's say, by how much? Hoover at 63%. FDR at 90%. Roosevelt actually sought a top bracket of 100%, complementing the minimum wage he'd codified in 1938 with a maximum wage of $25,000. If Biden's pledge to cancel the Trump tax cut for incomes above $400,000 shocks conservatives, they should consider that Roosevelt's proposal prohibited any American earning 1 cent above today's equivalent of $465,000. Wow. Even today, tariffs are a regressive tax, imposing a burden more than twice as great on the bottom 10% as on any other income group, according to a 2017 study by economists Catherine Russ of the University of California at Davis and Jay Shambaugh, currently Undersecretary for International Affairs at the Treasury Department. Oh, and there's more. Jason Furman of Harvard and a former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. A February 2024 study by economists Miguel Acosta of the Federal Reserve and Lydia Cox at the University of Wisconsin further found that going back to the 1930s, tariffs on luxury goods have been significantly lower than tariffs on low-end goods. For example, they wrote, a tariff on a $400 handbag made of reptile leather, 5.3%. The tariff on an $8 plastic-sided handbag, 16%. Tariffs may be necessary in limited instances to encourage the growth of certain industries, as the Biden administration is trying to do with electric vehicles, or to protect vital supply chains, as Biden is trying to do with microchips. Even in those instances, though, the prospect of a trade war makes me a little queasy. To embrace tariffs in the modern age as a source of revenue is simply insane. Trump has already proposed a 10% tariff on all foreign goods that by one estimate would cost the median American household $1,500 per year. Writing in the Wall Street Journal, Richard Rubin and Alex Leary calculate that to replace the $2.5 trillion that the IRS collects annually in income tax, tariff rates would have to be 70% or higher. Congratulations, lucky duckies. Trump wants to hit you with a 70% tax hike. Don't say I didn't warn you. So, anyway, yeah, not looking particularly smart. And by the way, of course, a lot of people pointing out that in his latest rally, Trump floated another thing, which was he was so mad at Biden over student debt forgiveness that he was promising, I'll replace it. I'm going to bring it back. People who got their debt erased are going to have it put back on them. I'm going to tax you one more time and replace your student debt and ruin your life because, I don't know, Biden helped you. So I'm going to unhelp you. Shouldn't that make him like the most unpopular person ever? Some people somehow think that that is awesome. and they can't wait. And that's the kind of revenge that they're talking about. I'm going to take revenge on people who had their student debt erased. My revenge is I'm going to extract that money from you anyway. Very populist. Okay, well, that's an interesting idea. That should make him super popular. Let me use the time that we got left. I want to jump back to a story that we started the other day that was so unbelievable that I couldn't even finish it. Of course, I started it really late, and so that was part of the reason. But I thought I maybe would go back to this and read more because I wanted to grasp the realities of the story. This is the piece from The Guardian on the FAA's investigation into counterfeit titanium. Do you remember this? I mean, I just never even imagined that there would be such a thing. It's very creative sometimes. Criminality, one of the greater creative engines out there. Unfortunately, it's a lot of negative energy going into the creativity there, but it just never really occurred to me to cut this corner. FAA investigates counterfeit titanium used in some Boeing and Airbus jets. Investigation comes, the subheader tells us, after a parts supplier found small holes in material used in the manufacturing of jets from corrosion. I said it's running in The Guardian, but it is in fact a Reuters Wire story. Do they give a byline for this or just say from Reuters? At any rate, let me give you the information. That's the more important part. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration is investigating falsified documents, check your paperwork, that were used to verify the authenticity of titanium used in some recently manufactured Boeing and Airbus jets. The New York Times reported on Friday. So this is a Reuters report about a New York Times report appearing in The Guardian. I mean, really, I guess I should, by rights, be reading the New York Times story about that. And why don't we do that? Are they from the same time frame? I mean, I don't know how the Guardian story got my attention before the New York Times one, but as long as they're pointing back, let's look at that one. That runs under the headline in the New York Times of FAA investigating how questionable titanium got into Boeing and Airbus jets. That's an interesting difference there. They just come out in the Guardian and say counterfeit. The material, which was purchased from a little-known Chinese company, was sold with falsified documents and used in parts that went into jets from both manufacturers. And here, I guess, is where the idea of using tariffs as a protective measure for American industry, it was mentioned in the microchip industry as being particularly helpful, but maybe titanium needs to be protected this way too, just to be sure that we have I don't know. It's not like we don't have American criminals who would cheat on this too. I think I had speculated at one point about Russian criminals, but here it is, I guess, Chinese instead. The sort of things that worry you when push comes to shove, like in the middle of the COVID pandemic, we weren't, people weren't sure, and maybe with good reason. Are we getting, when we get our KN95 masks and they're manufactured in China, are you sure they are up to standard? Do we have reason to wonder whether there would be motivation for either individual Chinese businesses or the Chinese government, perhaps, to look the other way at sending counterfeit masks? Maybe. Of course, it turns out that we were doing China dirty in the middle of the pandemic as well, which I guess should surprise no one. But let's focus on the titanium for a moment. The story runs this way. Mark Walker reporting for the New York Times on this one. Some recently manufactured Boeing and Airbus jets have components made from titanium that was sold using fake documentation verifying the material's authenticity, according to a supplier for the plane makers, raising concerns about the structural integrity of those airliners. And guess who has been having all sorts of problems with the structural integrity of their airliners? Boeing. Not so much that we've heard about Airbus, so maybe there's a little something extra going on at Boeing, but this might help explain things. The falsified documents are being investigated by Spirit Aerosystems, which supplies fuselages for Boeing and wings for Airbus, as well as the FAA. also investigating. There you go. The investigation comes, of course, after they found those small holes from corrosion, which should not happen to actual titanium, as I understand it. In a statement, the FAA said it was investigating the scope of the problem, trying to determine the short and long-term safety implications to planes that were made using the parts. It is unclear how many planes have parts made with questionable material. Boeing reported a voluntary disclosure to the FAA regarding procurement of material through a distributor who may have falsified or provided incorrect records. The statement said Boeing issued a bulletin outlining ways suppliers should remain alert to the potential of falsified records. And who would even think to look at this? I need titanium. I sell titanium. Fine. How much? About the same price as most people who sell titanium. Okay, I'll take it. But titanium, being what it is, I need to be able to assure people that it is, of whatever, a certain condition, purity, etc. I need you to guarantee me that with some paperwork that you swear is true. Okay, cross fingers, counterfeit paperwork, hand it over. We say that this is the expensive stuff we're charging you for, and it just isn't. Wow. The revelation comes at a moment of intense scrutiny of Boeing, of course, and the broader aviation industry, which is reeling from a series of mishaps and safety issues. In January, a door panel blew off a Boeing 737 MAX 9 jet while it was in flight, prompting several federal investigations. In April, Boeing told the FAA about a separate episode involving potentially falsified inspection records, more falsified records, related to the wings of a 787 Dreamliner plane, of several 787 Dreamliner planes. Boeing reported to the FAA that it might have skipped required inspections involving the jet's wings, and that it would need to reinspect some of the Dreamliners still in production. So that's on them. That's not very good. Although I wonder whether they were like, no, we inspected them. We just were finding these small holes that led us to believe eventually, oh my God, we got counterfeit titanium. How many of these things are there out there? What are we going to do? We can't ground every Boeing plane. That'll destroy everything. What should we be doing? I don't know. While we try to figure it out, why don't we just say we're skipping those inspections? And my bad, we're skipping inspections. Blame us for that. Better than saying every Boeing in the air today is in danger. On May 30th, Boeing submitted a plan to the FAA outlining safety improvements that it planned to make and committed to weekly meetings with the agency. Dave Calhoun, the Boeing chief executive, is set to testify on Tuesday. This was a while back, so I guess he's already testified, before a Senate panel on the company's safety issues. The use of potentially fake titanium, though, which has not previously been reported, threatens to extend the industry's problems beyond Boeing to Airbus, its European competitor. The planes that included components made with the material were built between 2019 and 2023. So, they're out there. Among them, some Boeing 737 MAX and 787 Dreamliner airlines, as well as Airbus A220 jets, according to 3 people familiar with the matter who spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. It is not clear how many of those planes are in service or which airlines own them. Spirit, not the airline, but the manufacturer, is trying to determine where the titanium came from, whether it meets proper standards despite its phony documentation. That could be, right? And whether the parts made from the material are structurally sound enough to hold up through the projected lifespans of the jets, company officials said. Spirit said it was trying to determine the most efficient way to remove and replace the affected parts that ended up being necessary, if that ended up being necessary. This is about documents that have been falsified, forged, and counterfeited, said Joe Buccino, Buccino, a Spirit spokesman. Once we realized the counterfeit titanium made its way into the supply chain, we immediately contained all suspected parts to determine the scope of the issue. But I don't think that was really possible. The titanium in question has been used in a variety of aircraft parts, including, or rather, according to Spirit officials, for the 787 Dreamliner. That includes the passenger entry door, cargo doors, and a component that connects the engines to the airplane's frame. For the 737 MAX and the A220, the affected parts include a heat shield that protects a component, which connects a jet's engine to the frame from extreme heat. Hey, those things are important. Boeing and Airbus both said their tests of affected materials so far had shown no signs of problems. Boeing said it directly purchased most of the titanium used in its plane production, so most of its supply was unaffected. This industry-wide issue affects some shipments of titanium received by a limited set of suppliers, and tests performed to date have indicated that the correct titanium alloy was used, Boeing said in a statement. To ensure compliance, we are removing any affected parts on airplanes prior to delivery. Our analysis shows the in-service fleet can continue to fly safely, which is, I guess, them saying, okay, so any problems that we've had so far at Boeing are on us after all. Oops, well, okay. Maybe that's actually ultimately better. Airbus likewise maintained that the A220's airworthiness remains intact. Numerous tests have been performed on parts coming from the same source of supply, an Airbus spokeswoman said in a statement, adding, "The safety and quality of our aircraft are our most important priorities, and we are working in close collaboration with our suppliers." I suppose it is possible that the stuff is airworthy, just has a lower lifespan than they were considering, and that routine inspections and ongoing maintenance will perhaps reveal structural problems earlier than they would otherwise have expected to see such problems, but they're constantly on the lookout for such problems, and will just end up replacing parts earlier than they thought and at greater expense. But it doesn't mean the planes are made out of paper mache and will fall out of the sky. The European Union Aviation Safety Agency said in a statement that they opened an investigation into the material after learning of the traceability issues from their counterparts in Italy. An agency spokesperson said the investigation is ongoing and has yet to turn up evidence of an immediate safety issue. However, the agency will investigate further the root cause of the document traceability issue and continues to monitor closely any new developments that could lead to a potential unsafe condition in the fleet, the statement said. Spirit has suffered from quality issues and financial troubles in recent years, and it came under new scrutiny this year after the episode in January involving the door panel on the 737 MAX, whose fuselage it makes. This problem illustrates the complex global supply chain used in producing modern jetliners, and the story of what appears to have gone wrong involves companies in China, Italy, Turkey, and the United States. The issue appears to date to 2019, when a Turkish material supplier, Turkish Aerospace Industries, purchased a batch of titanium from a supplier in China. According to people familiar with the issue, the Turkish company then sold that titanium to several companies that make aircraft parts, and those parts made their way to Spirit, which used them in Boeing and Airbus planes. And I don't know, something. I just keep thinking back all of a sudden to notorious spy Mike Flynn and his weird relationship with the Turkish government. Anything to do with this? No indication, just because they both involve Turkey. That's a most specious connection, but just wondering. What did they ask him to do exactly? In December of 2023, an Italian company that bought the titanium from Turkish Aerospace Industries noticed that the material looked different from what the company typically received. The company, Titanium International Group, also found that the certificates that came with the titanium seemed inauthentic. Turkish Aerospace Industries did not respond to a request for comment. Those are two red flags. Hey, this looks like different material. Should I check the paperwork? Yes. Hey, this paperwork looks different than usual too. Yeah, I would say that's combined. That's a pretty big red flag. Are you sure that what you got here is titanium? Ordinarily, I'd say, sure, I'm sure. I know what titanium looks like. Well, does it look like titanium to you? No, it doesn't. Okay, problem. What about the paperwork? Does it look real? No. Hey, shouldn't we stop things right here? Spirit began investigating the matter, and the company notified Boeing and Airbus in January that it could not verify the source of the titanium used to make the parts. I'm glad that paperwork exists, right? Otherwise, it's just, I don't know, fly the planes and see if they fall. Titanium International Group told Spirit that when it bought the material in 2019, it had no clue that the paperwork had been forged, according to Spirit officials. Francesca Conti, a general manager for Titanium International Group, said that the episode was under investigation and that the group, she could not provide any additional details. The documents in question are known as certificates of conformity. They serve somewhat as a birth certificate for the titanium, detailing its quality, how it was made, and where it comes from. People familiar with the situation said it appeared that an employee at the Chinese company that sold the titanium had forged the details on the certificates, writing that the material had come from another Chinese company, Baoji Titanium Industry, a firm that often supplies verified titanium. So that was nice of them to do. A firm, Baoji Titanium, later confirmed that it had not supplied the titanium. So that's where the forgery comes in. The origin of the titanium remains unclear. Do the Russians do any titanium trade? Are there any titanium magnates, like aluminum magnates? Baoji Titanium does know about the company and has no business dealing with this company, the firm said in a statement to the New York Times. Without knowing where the material came from or how it was handled, it is impossible to verify the airworthiness of the parts, said Greg Brown, Senior Vice President of Global Quality at Spirit. Our quality management process relies on the traceability of raw materials all the way from the mills. There's been a loss of traceability in that process and a documentation challenge. That's one way of putting it. So they started testing titanium parts to make sure aviation grade material was used. The company's testing components that are still in stock and that are on undelivered fuselages. What else can they test, right? So far, Spirit's testing has confirmed that the titanium is the appropriate grade for airplane manufacturers, but the company has been unable to confirm that the titanium was treated through the approved airplane manufacturing process. The material passed some of the materials testing performed on it, but failed others. So how good is that? Well, still a lot to check out here.
From netrootsradio.com.
But we made it more or less to the end of the article.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
So, okay, like we said, there's no immediate danger apparently to the public. They'll be monitoring these parts to see whether there's premature wear, but it might cost the airlines a little bit more, but it's not like it's made out of paper mache. Still, unbelievable ways to just chisel away and rift a fortune for yourself. Amazing. We'll be back tomorrow, probably with more.